Hey everyone, welcome back. Josh Hannibray here with the Truck Focus Podcast, the podcast that connects transportation industry experts to the industry to help create a pivotal change. So in today's episode, I'm super excited. I have two legends in the industry that have been massive influences in my life. Their names Kyle and Charlotte. They're the owners of Alberta Rose Transport Compliance. So we dive through a lot of really exciting stuff in the realm of compliance, the impact on people, the impact on carriers, our industry, and a bunch of different stuff. So stay tuned. I'm just super excited for all of the value that they've offered in this first episode. It's also exciting because we're going to be doing a lot. We'll be doing like a panel type situation here shortly that I think everyone in our industry can really appreciate because it's really smart people talking about really cool stuff. So stay tuned for the episode. We're ready to rock and roll. Thanks again for all of the support. Have a great day. Hey, good day. On today's episode, I'm super excited to introduce two industry experts that have been instrumental in my personal life as well as my professional life as I grow, not just in the realm of transportation compliance. That's definitely something that we're going to talk about, but just my care for people in our industry. So who I'm talking about is Charlotte Bellis and Kyle May. They're the team behind Alberta Rose Transport Compliance. Kyle is a third-party auditor for Alberta Transportation, and Charlotte is a new carrier compliance reviewer. So between them, they bring to the table several years of experience in the transportation industry, management and operations leadership and legal compliance, which gives them a unique perspective on safety compliance. Their highly sought after programs have allowed transportation companies from East Coast to West Coast to save time, money, and confidently face National Safety Code Audits. So just wanted to say welcome. Thank you so much for hopping on today, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us, Josh.
Hey, Josh.
So awesome. So I'll just dive right into it. I'll kind of start with Charlotte, if that's okay. And then Kyle, if you want to talk, I guess you can too. No, I'm just kidding.
Get a word in.
So Charlotte, if you just wanted to quickly describe essentially who are you? What makes you tick? What makes you you?
Absolutely. So yeah, I have started off with a career in the legal field, and then kind of moved over into management and operations, and kind of in a roundabout way, safety compliance. And prior to joining Kyle in Alberta Rose, I actually have my own business as a virtual assistant and online business manager. I have clients all over the world. And as Alberta Rose really started to take off, I kind of stepped in to help Kyle, and then decided from there. Initially, wasn't really kind of interested in becoming a third-party auditor. I started off behind the scenes, but as time kind of went on, I thought, actually, this is something I really enjoy doing. So I became a new carrier compliance reviewer, and recently completed the crossover training to become a third-party auditor. So I'm due to kind of step into that role here in the next few months.
Awesome. Yeah, super exciting. And I think that's a big win collectively for ARTC, but also for the province and carriers in Alberta. So good job. How about you, Kyle? What makes you you?
Yeah, what makes me me? That's a convoluted question, but I can tell you kind of how I got into the industry. You know what? Years ago, I started out driving a little pressure truck, Class 5 license, right, for an awesome company at the Rocky Mountain House, Alberta, called Spongworks. And that was great. It kind of gave me a bit of a taste. But I was quite young, went to school the whole bit, kind of got into the idea of wanting to do safety within transportation, but didn't really know too much about it. Didn't know what I was going to get into. Certainly didn't know that the National Safety Code was even a thing. So, fast forward a few years, and I decided that I better actually learn more about transportation. What better way to do it than by getting a Class 1 driver, license and driving a truck. And I was fairly naive, like everybody else who drives down the roads. I'd see these big, gigantic machines coming down, and I'd be like, oh yeah, it's like a pickup, just with more wheels, right? Which is completely not true. So kudos to all the truck drivers out there who actually know what they're doing. So I went ahead, I took my Class 1 license. Didn't realize at the time that sometimes, especially back in the day, they're teaching you how to pass a test. And that is not a slight on any driving school, right? driving schools are awesome. They're great. They're still a business. And so as soon as I was done, I mean, I've always been good at chatting with people, and I decided, you know what, I want to see some of the countryside. What does a real truck driver do? So I talked to my friend who talked to his boss in BC. He had a truck driving company. And the longest story short of it is I talked myself into having a job where I drove across North America. I'd had my license for 3 weeks and never driven anything loaded before. Also, should also mention that I didn't know how to split gears because no one taught me. So anyway, I managed to talk myself into this job. I got up there, I did the little drug test. I must have done a couple of other things I don't really remember. I don't remember much for training, and I certainly didn't know much about logbooks. But I do remember this. I do remember, one, I wasn't given a driver evaluation, and two, I wasn't told, I was told by the owner of the company, look, I can't tell you to run 2 logbooks, but you won't make any money if you don't. And, that's an unfortunate mindset within the industry that we're trying to do away with. But, to make a long story short, I got in there, and my first trip was to Hollywood, Ohio. So I had to go through the mountains. I went all through Rogers Pass. I went through downtown Chicago. And what I will tell you is that it was practically a suicide mission. I was I don't remember where I was hauling, but it was lumber or something. It was very, very, it was a very big load. I had to tarp for the first time. And we're not talking tarping like a small load. I'm like way up there having to, I hadn't taken, basically I had to harness myself in, right, to tarp this thing up. And so somehow I didn't kill myself and I didn't kill anybody else on the road, but I did decide I needed a better job after that. But all of that, this long story, basically collectively, brings me to the point where I realize people don't know what necessarily is expected of them within the industry. And I realized this, right? I wasn't doing my logbooks correctly. In fact, I'd go days on the road without doing the logbook. Why? I was never really taught to do it. I was handed them and I was told, fill these out, right? Well, I looked at them and it was like reading a different language. So, looking at, somehow I didn't get asked for a logbook if I was stopped or anything like that. At least before I stopped, went into a different role. And so it really kind of gave me a passion. Like, I wanted to see a difference made, right? I've got family, you've got family, they'll drive the roads. And I don't want someone with 3 weeks experience like I had driving the same roads that they have, right? So they're on. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the short and long of it there.
Awesome, man. And that, I think collectively just describe why I think we're going on 3 years of having a relationship now. I've been able to rely on your advice, partially because you've been there, you've done it. But I think we all have a really high passion for changing that. Here's your car, or here's your truck keys, here's your logbook, see you later. And
yeah. And what's a pre-trip? What's Schedule 1? What's you sometimes I guess you're told about some of this, right? In some of the training, sometimes you're not, and you've got to figure it out for yourself. And people, even though I know we go through driver's tests, I know we were taught about how to do a pre-trip when we're there, but a lot of people it doesn't stick. Right. And we don't realize the importance. Right. So, I know a story, for example, of a gentleman who didn't do a pre-trip in the States, and the tire came flying off of his truck and hit another car in another lane. That person died. He lost his license for 5 years, went to jail for 6 months. They couldn't prove he did a pre-trip that day. Why? Because he didn't do one. Right. Had he done one, I don't know. Maybe the outcome would have been different. Maybe it would have saved someone's life.
Yeah, and there's a little too many of those stories, I think, in our industry, because even though it's big, it's really small. And especially now, social media and just fast access to news, you see all the mistakes. And again, collectively, I think we're more focused on the solutions and simplifying it so that way. What's the slogan again, Charlotte?
Your driver's seat, we keep you there.
Yeah.
We just keep you there. Yeah.
And yeah, I think that speaks so loudly to just what is possible. And because, yeah, like I remember I took my class 1 in 8 hours of training, and I don't know, 2 weeks later, there's no way I could have passed the road. Well, the road test, yeah, driving part, but you want me to do like a level 1 proper actual inspection during my, like if I had another tester there? No, just it's not enough time. So obviously there's a lot of cool things that we'll get into in this episode and in future episodes. Melt's one of them. But yeah, no, I really appreciate your guys' honesty. So when working with clients, it's cool from an ARTC perspective. You get to see a lot of different sectors of our industry. So we'll start off kind of out the gate. What do you see as opportunities in our current climate? Just dealing with, I don't even want to talk about the pandemic, but just dealing with where we're currently at. What opportunities do you see for carriers right now? And either can answer, whoever wants to juggle it.
I think, I mean, obviously, given the kind of obligatory nod to COVID, this is an opportunity really for everybody to really kind of reassess their business model and to reassess their operation and what's working and maybe what's not working. And really, I think the secret to any business success is being able to diversify, right? Being able to move with the current market, being able to continuously identify what your clients' needs are and how you can meet those needs. I think right now, there really is a lot of opportunity for carriers and different companies to really achieve safety excellence. I think that in Alberta specifically, and if you've been in Alberta for any length of time, then you're probably familiar and have heard, core programs, which is obviously talks about OH&S, which is a little different to what we're talking about here today. But while they're not necessarily siblings, they're kind of more like cousins. It's now commonplace in Alberta specifically that if you want to be able to bid on certain jobs in certain industries, if you want to be able to be recognized for having a certain level of safety excellence, even having that certain level of safety excellence is required in order to be able to have the kind of opportunities here that you want. And so really the entire image or the entire operation of an organization has really grown into that. And it's really commonplace, particularly here in Alberta, that, if you go to a work site and they have a core program, there are certain things that have to be done and don't have to be done. And if you don't like it, then that's not the company for you. And I really believe that transportation is moving in that way too. A lot of people see currently as, compliance, transportation safety compliance as maybe the government's overreach into, their business. But ultimately, the busier that we get as an economy, and the more people that we have, and particularly in previous years, people have come into Alberta for employment opportunities. The busier we get, the more it is required to implement certain standards of safety. And indeed, the National Safety Code obviously is applicable across Canada. And so therefore, being able to have a certain standard of safety and be able to show that you have a certain level of safety excellence is going to set you apart from your competitors, because nobody wants a contractor on site that's potentially going to jeopardize maybe the work that client has put in place, over several years. I mean, it's taken them, people say it takes you several years to build a reputation and literally seconds to destroy it. So more and more, I believe what we're going to see is, even in the transportation industry, if you want certain opportunities, then you want to break into certain jobs, if you want certain opportunities to open up to you, then you are going to have a certain level of safety excellence. And I think what will go away is this attitude of, this is an overreach, into what we're doing. And I think more and more what we'll see is this is just what's required. If this is the industry you want to work in, this is the sandpit that you play in.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned a couple of things there, as carriers have to diversify because of opportunities for serving their current client base, but also obtaining new. Yeah. Right now, if a carrier is not familiar with core, but they want to start delivering to certain sites, they're going to have to become familiar with core. And yeah, obviously in the last, I guess it'd be 18 months or so, different change, well, maybe longer than that now, different changes happened just with your fitness certificate and prerequisites to even apply for one. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Kyle, do you have any thoughts on that? Gotcha.
Yeah. I have plenty of thoughts, Josh. I don't know if we've got plenty of time.
That's okay. Okay, we'll talk about diversifying. So one thing that I speak on as often as I can is it's great when a carrier goes from saying being oil field specific to now they want to haul super Bs of lumber through the mountains.
Yeah.
What, from your guys' perspective, I'll ask two questions. So first is, do you see a lot of that type of shift happening, again, being based in Alberta? And second, what do carriers need to have in place to go even from a provincial carrier oil base to a federal carrier going through the hills? What is some high level, you don't have to be too scientific, but what are some high level things that carriers need to see or need to implement, that are doing that?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a huge change within Alberta and within within the whole country right now, but especially within Alberta. And carriers that were involved in the energy sector, right, transportation-wise, we are seeing them shift. We're seeing, I can think we run a program where we help carriers with their National Safety Code compliance, their IFTA prorate. We help get them lower insurance rates, the whole shebang. And one of the things that that we do is we've got a lot of clients in a lot of different industries, but especially we have several in the oil industry. And I can think of one specifically right now in Lethbridge, among several, but they've actually switched their operations from just focusing on being a provincial carrier, right, running within the province doing work in the oil industry, to now half their operations running long haul across into the States, right, and across Canada. And another carrier who's up and left Alberta pretty much because they haven't been able to keep their contracts due to the lack of work. And so now at this point, they are running goods across BC. Their operations moved to BC, and they found work there. And I don't know if you want to kind of add something to this, but
I think, just to really echo what Kyle said, we are definitely seeing right now in the current climate, a lot of carriers who have provincial safety fitness certificates electing to go as a federal carrier with a federal operating status. And I think the biggest change really that they're probably going to see initially will be obviously hours of service regulations. Federal and provincial hours of service regulations are completely different. And, the challenge that we have in Alberta, which is unique to us, and also potentially Saskatchewan, because they too have two operating statuses, is that carriers can either register for a federal safety fitness certificate or a provincial. Aside from Alberta and Saskatchewan, the rest of Canada, it's just federal. And so sometimes that can give cause a lot of confusion amongst drivers, because typically as a driver, you don't just work for a federal carrier or a provincial carrier, you've probably worked for both. And so the hours of service rules are completely different in both. And so one of the biggest factors is, before, obviously, aside from doing all of the work to change the safety fitness certificate, is making sure drivers are educated in the federal hours of service, and also not even just making sure they're educated in that, is usually we would recommend recapping the other courses, the weights and dimensions, the cargo or load securement, the trip inspections, because it could have been a little bit of time from having done it previously. But aside from that, it's not just the federal hours of service, it's now being able to manage your fuel tax and your registration in such a way that is beneficial for your business. As a an Albertan carrier, obviously the fuel tax that you pay goes to Alberta, the registration that you fees go to Alberta, the registration fees that you pay go to Alberta. But when you are traveling outside of the province, whether you're going anywhere else in Canada or even the US and Mexico, you are obviously using their roads. And as a commercial carrier, your vehicle has a much bigger impact on their infrastructure. You're using their fuel. And so therefore, there is a financial liability in terms of registration and fuel. And so, potentially, depending on how often you're going to be going outside of the province, rather than applying for trip permits, it may be a case that you are actually now looking to apply for and manage IFTA and prorate, so that you're doing that annually or quarterly, rather than just paying in a bunch of permits.
I think I just want to add as well, a lot of companies that are having to switch, right, from maybe a provincial to a federal status, or they are moving base, or whatever that might be. I mean, as you know, Josh, that the National Safety Code is made up of 16 different guidelines, right? However, the provinces set their legislation according to those guidelines. So you're going to find different variables from province to province to province, right? For example, if you're in BC, your simple little things as simple as the driver files, your abstracts are going to have to be, the preceding 10 days, right? Whereas in Alberta, it's the preceding 30 days, right? You're doing CVIPs twice as often at this point in time, or at least just a little bit ago. BC didn't have to follow schedule 1. However, you go across the country and there's all sorts of different things, right? You get to Nova Scotia and suddenly we're looking at having to have drivers are having to have first aid training, whereas in Alberta, they're not having to have that, right? And so there's all these little different variables throughout each province, right? And it's getting to know that. The carriers need to, all of a sudden become aware that even though the guidelines are fairly similar, the legislation is going to be different a little bit here and there, and enough to make a big enough difference on your operation.
Totally. Yeah, you mentioned something too, just in regards to the training, where like right now we're dealing with Quebec spring thaw weights. So you can be, what is fully loaded in Alberta is completely irrelevant once you go a couple provinces over. And just time zone changes, and where are you going to sleep, and where am I getting fuel? Like, you touched on some really good points.
It's huge.
Yeah. So it's funny. So one of the things when I first started the Truck Focus podcast, the blog, all of that, is I really wanted to get into the minds of my experts, and anyone listening, not just saying this because they're virtually in front of me, this is why I've trusted Kyle and Charlotte for so long, is they're willing to spend the time to dissect what is required in BC all the way to the East Coast. And because everyone is different. So obviously NSC, like the standards, their guidelines, and then there's provincial, then there's the federal, and then there's a lot. And that's, again, why I really trust them. So this is my big shout out to Kyle and Charlotte. And so it's really good. So, so mentioning federal too, obviously June's right around the corner. We don't need to dissect too much just on this topic, but I do feel it's relevant to talk about, is the implementation of ELDs. More so I know there's a lot of interesting conversations taking place right now, rightfully so, but I want to more so focus on what are your thoughts on an ELD system, and what are the benefits an ELD can bring to the carrier, aside from waiting on the accreditation and all of that conversation. We can save that probably for another day, but more so, what is the benefits to a carrier? What are your thoughts on it? And if you wanted to kind of elaborate on that side of it.
Sure.
I think obviously, aside from being able to ensure that every ELD or every logbook, if you like, or electronic logging device adheres to certain technical standards, I think there's a lot of benefit to the carrier in the fact that there is uniformity, right? I think some of the challenges that we dealt with paper logs is that everybody has their own way of completing them. And although, you're still going to get that to a degree because every individual is different, there is going to be certain information that you will be able to ensure is uniform across all of the ELDs, all of the logs. There's also a lot of great reporting elements to it too. You're able to, for a start, actually, it's a great way to help you manage your IFTA. You can actually pull off fuel information on there, trip information, which makes your IFTA reporting a lot easier. You can, of course, it's a lot easier for a dispatch to be able to look at and anticipate what hours are there, right? You can actually track your vehicles in real time. You are, if you have a couple of drivers where you're not kind of sure if maybe, they're telling you something and you're not sure, you get to kind of look real time where they're at. And Josh, you really, obviously with your industry experience a lot about telematics, but you get, the dash cams with some of the ELDs, that's something that comes with it, right? There is the ability to track maintenance. Suddenly, if you're doing trip inspections on your ELD, there is the option of being able to log in and actually look in real time again what defects are being identified, and making sure that the defects are getting corrected, having your shop being able to access that too, rather than literally again having to share paper. In fact, we had this conversation with a client of ours. The maintenance manager said, so I need to walk across the yard and basically get all of the trip inspections to kind of go through them to see what their deficiencies were. And I said, well, if you're going to continue to use paper, yes, but you guys are moving towards an ELD.
No, the drivers really should be turning them in.
Well, yes, yeah, essentially,
Yeah.
But essentially, yes, once they're telling you get them, yeah, you are going to have to go through them, right? If your driver's not telling you. But with the power of an ELD is obviously you can log in and you can actually look at what defects have been identified, right? You can fix them and record it right there. You get to monitor things like fuel speed, right, which helps with fuel consumption, etc. So there's actually a myriad of benefits there, and I think that to those carriers who are maybe concerned at the change and maybe even resistant to the change, my advice would be to embrace it, because there's actually a lot of benefits that come with them, and rather than just making sure that you're quote unquote adhering to the rules, they're actually a great way of covering yourself as well, right? Because obviously when things are there in black and white, then you're able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you have been adhering to your the obligations and the requirements of you under the legislation.
Yeah, you touched on some really key points that I think will be I'd say the hot topics moving forward after June, maybe wait till July or August. But yeah, so we wrote an article recently that was shared in the Dispatch, which is an awesome newsletter for everyone listening. So I highly recommend you check that out too. And it talked about the cost of downtime just because someone didn't want to say something. So just like the service manager saying, I need to walk across the yard. It's like, to Kyle's point, the driver's actually supposed to hand those in. But if someone takes Friday off, they know there's a defect on Thursday, and they don't say anything, then whoever the new person is hops in the truck. Oh, I can't take this. It has this wrong with it. Okay, the truck's sitting till what, Monday, maybe Tuesday by the time the shop can look at it. So yeah, it's super expensive. And then speaking more on just my experience, so I've tested when it was still an onboarding recording device, and the novelty for me, it was an honor to test. Younger driver, I was part of a fleet and I was the youngest by far. So I think it was just because I was interested in the technology side. But not having to think about, do my hours add up? Like, I hated at the end of my shift, I already worked 11.5 hours. I didn't want to bust out a calculator because I didn't have the flip phone didn't have, like, that they gave me didn't have the calculator. So it was literally, you had a calculator, they had to calculate every day. And I'm like, this is a waste of 10 minutes of my life. And just those simple mistakes, being confident roadside inspection where you think, yes, my hours are good, my log's good. You only work 10 hours a day. You're not going over nothing. But on paper, well, you forgot to actually record the city, and your line is a little, all of that concern, it's gone. From a training standpoint too, so speaking to all the safety officers out there, once you're full electronics, a lot of the ELD systems will have driver coaching systems included, or it's a package that you can get. You're coaching based off of data that someone else did. You're not just giving an opinion. So you can come at it from a compassionate, empathetic standpoint. I get it. There's lots of traffic. I get it. You're downhill, whatever. It's just you're sticking to the facts. So I've noticed industry that's already adapted ELDs has really been able to make that shift. Kyle, what's your thoughts?
Honestly, I think Charlotte's talked about some really important aspects of ELDs. I like to even just go down to and you've kind of touched on this already, Josh, but what I was thinking, I like how it makes the lives of the drivers easier, right? We sit here a lot and we talk a lot about the carriers, the business, and the government, right? What sometimes we forget about is the drivers themselves, right? And I mean, I was a driver. You were a driver. I know that, Josh, right? I grew up, at Rimby, Alberta. For those who are aware, I grew up 22 miles west in a little community out by Leedale or Gimlet, and my closest neighbor was a cow, right? And so I grew up in kind of that blue collar environment where my family members are the truck drivers, right? They are the people going out and doing the physical labor every day, and they're wonderful people, right? And so it does make a driver's life easier, right down to, as you said, Josh, making sure the locations on the driver's logs are recorded properly, right? We got a lot of guys who are in a hurry, they don't do it correctly, they get an audit, the auditor picks up on that, right? You've got everything from, as long as the name's recorded properly on the log, I mean, that's a time saver in itself. The home terminal, the principal place of address. Now, of course, you gotta remember the home terminal could change, but a lot of these guys, it's staying the same every day, right? And so it could be pre-populated in there, can be put in there, and the guys, it's just making things a little bit easier for them, right? So I guess that's my thoughts there. Also, though, I like the telematics side of it, and that way I really like, as in dash cams or the cameras in the trucks, right? You can, a proper system, right, can really affect your insurance as well, right? So what I mean by that is maybe your insurance rates aren't going to go down all the time by you having it just on the truck itself, and it might, but it might prove who was at fault in an accident, right? Yeah. And if it wasn't your fault, it's pretty easy to see through one of those cameras. And I've seen it before, where it's just a clear-cut case. Where before, it would have been he said, she said, what's the case here? So I think there's a lot of benefits to what's coming up. And I think somewhat for some of our older drivers out there, we just have to be continue to remember to be patient. Technology has not always been a big part of trucking, and trucking has changed over the years a lot. And so it's a good opportunity for young drivers and old drivers to meet, where the old drivers have a lot to give and advice to the young drivers. The young drivers can really help out with the more of the technological side of things, right? Yeah. So it actually is almost like bridging a gap between our old drivers and our young drivers, and actually giving them something to communicate on and develop those relationships. And we need those within the industry. I know I'm getting on rabbit trail here.
Yeah, it's good.
The industry, right? We need our young drivers and our old drivers to be able to communicate. Those who've got experience have a lot to give the young drivers out on the road. And the young drivers, although they may be more inexperienced on the road, they have a lot to offer the new drivers. And there is a disconnect there these days. I've seen it all the time, right? I'm in a lot of these trucking groups on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I see all the time, "You're not a real trucker if," and it's usually pointing at the younger generation, or the younger generation pointing at the old, instead of coming together and saying, "Hey, how can we make this a better environment for all of us?" So anyway, that's my rant.
If I can just really quickly add to that too, for those drivers out there who maybe technology isn't necessarily your forte, or you're kind of a little bit intimidated at the prospect of learning new technology. A lot of ELD providers are aware, and I would say have created their product thinking about who the end user is going to be. And there are some really great products out there. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see who is accredited, but there are a lot of great products out there. And what I would actually say is, once you actually learn how to use the ELD, firstly, when you learn how to use it, there's not a ton that's going to actually change, right? It's not like you're going to have to learn something different every day. But once you actually learn how to use it, I think a lot of drivers will find it actually makes their life a lot easier. It's far simpler to do and to adhere to doing your logbooks than actually doing them via paper. So yeah, just to your what you said there, Josh, there are a lot of companies out there where they actually do provide the training as part of their implementation package, so that drivers feel confident going into using them, knowing kind of how how they work. And there's been a lot of app-based ELDs out there to date, and if anyone has experience of using those, it's not too much of a jump from that. But I honestly do believe that it will make your life a lot easier, and actually will probably be easier to do than when you were keeping a paper log.
Awesome. Completely agree. And yeah, again, thank you for being very honest on your thoughts, because it is to some, it's a touchy subject. And I think everything that you guys have explained are things that need to be discussed more in depth, more publicly, so that way our industry has confidence in what we're getting into. And yeah, I know the accreditation part's still underway, but yeah, I think we just have to trust those that are in power to make good decisions, and then we can continue to enlighten and empower our industry by just viewing it a little differently here and there. So just kind of in closing on today's episode, Charlotte, you mentioned, and if you want to talk about it, Kyle, you can too, but on the IFTA prorate side, I think that's a really untalked about opportunity too. I actually never thought of that. So that's smart. So is that something that you guys are focused on helping carriers with too? And if so, if you wanted to kind of elaborate on that, as well as what other services that you do offer to our industry, and what locations are you? Alberta specific, BC, Alberta, because Kyle mentioned out in Halifax. So if we wanted to kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, IFTA and prorate is something that we focus on. We actually provide full circle solutions to clients. So right from, you're a new operator, you're wanting to get into the business, right up into, to clients where, we help them, we set up and maintain their National Safety Code programs, maintain the administrative side of things, so the driver and the vehicle files. We, provide the training, as well as, the carrier profile monitoring, logbook monitoring. But yes, IFTA and prorate is a big part of what we do, because sometimes as a carrier, you can find that just takes up so much of your time. And one of the things that we really strive to do is, we recognize that as a business owner, you wear a lot of hats. And sometimes taking care of those things which are really important, like your insurance or your accounting or your safety compliance, sometimes can take you away from the reason you got into business in the first place. And so what we do is we kind of take over part of that, so that, the safety compliance and the IFTA and prorate reporting, so that you can kind of get back to focusing on what I call your zone of genius, the thing that makes you good at what you do, the reason why you got into business in the first place. And so, very often, what we say is, it's no one person can bring everything to the table, but with us, you are working with a team of experts. Often our cost is lower than if you were employing one individual, who is able to look after these various aspects of your compliance and your operation, which allows you to focus on going to that next level in business.
I found early on when I started consulting, the two biggest pain points for carriers was one, of course, insurance rates, right? But also two was that they didn't have time, and they didn't really know how to run a proper NSC program. It hadn't been talked about as much. And they would hire someone, and someone would come in there to kind of do a fly-by-night, right? Come in, pass them a bunch of documents, say, follow this, have fun with this, you got to have this, that. and the other, and we'll see you later, and I want my check for, $1 billion. And well, I would love to be a billionaire as well. I saw that there was a lot more opportunity to go in and really guide and help carriers, right? So that they know the problem, so they can really handle the process. And so what we did is we set up a program where we work with you, and it's not always indefinitely. Sometimes it's until you can take it on yourself. Sometimes it's for 6 months or a year. But the idea is that we're going in there, we're taking a look at your safety and maintenance program to start off. Not only we're going through it to make sure it meets legislative requirements, maybe we're creating you a new one, and we're also creating it a bit more suited to your specific industry, because transportation is such a wide, broad umbrella, right? At that point, we're going through your driver's files. And again, depending what province you're in, right? As we said, there are different things, different variables, right? So we're going through, saying, okay, this is missing, this is what we need to get. Can we collect this? Can we help create this, right? And what I mean by not going back and breaking the law or creating anything that we could, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about simple things like resumes, right? 3-year work histories, right? Things like that have to be about training, right? Do they not have the proper training on file? So of course we have our own platform now where Charlotte and I have, it's not a $20 million, presentation, right? It hasn't won any Hollywood awards, but it's a decent enough training setup that we've gone ahead and we've presented our own training. We would do it in classroom on video, right, where they take the tests, they get the certifications, and they're doing it online. So that now when a company hires a new driver, they don't immediately have to hire someone to come in classroom, do the classroom training. They don't have to immediately go on to Biz Trainer and pay $400 per driver, right? They can get it as part of their monthly package that we're helping them with, right? They can get it from us, right? We're going through their vehicle files, doing the same thing. We are sending out reminders saying, hey guys, we're checking out your maintenance, your CDEP's coming up. Did you know that, right? We're working with their mechanics, if they've got mechanics on staff. If not, we're helping them find shops that we know are going to provide the best quality service, right? We are essentially taking a look at the carrier profile. We're looking at what's their risk rating at, right? Why is it there? What patterns can we see within the carrier profile month to month? What extra training do the drivers need? Why are they being put out of service for things the drivers are supposed to catch immediately or on their on-road inspections, right? What training do those drivers need, and how can we make this better so that in the long run the risk rating goes down? Because as you know, risk rating goes up too high, you get put on monitoring, right? You get put on monitoring. You could wind up with an audit. Your status could go down to conditional, not. You miss out on all sorts of opportunities like different permits. You miss out on opportunities like insurance rates. We've got one gentleman who was just dying with their insurance rates, and after we helped set up his program, and with him we only go in once a year, and we just go through his stuff and we help help his company kind of keep on top. He's got his own staff, but in the end it saved him thousands of dollars in insurance. He's able to get off of facility insurance and go back to a normal insurance program, and he's been able to stay off now for 3 years, and we just kind of keep that guidance. So we're always there to try and talk with our clients, and we realize that insurance is also a big portion of this as well. So of course, again, we're also monitoring logs. One thing I'd like to state quickly about logs, right, and ELDs is a lot of drivers, a lot of carriers seem to think that they have an ELD system. That means that they're no longer going to have to monitor logs, right? And that's, it's a legislative requirement to be monitoring your logs if you're a federal carrier. And they think that does it for them. Essentially, oh, that's perfect. I'm not going to have any more issues with my logs. That is the farthest thing from the truth. You still need a human being going through those logs, right? Verifying them with different documents, making sure that your drivers are still staying within their hours. So I think, Charlotte, you had something you wanted to add to this as well?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, particularly when you're a business owner, you can see the field, you can look at all of the requirements, in the field of safety, and it can seem enormous, right? And sometimes, it just seems like it's too much paperwork. But really, safety is a necessary part of business, just like having your books and doing your books and your accounting is a necessary part of business, like insurance is a necessary part of your business. And what people don't necessarily realize is when your safety program is leveraged in the right way, it can actually save you money. Not only that, it can actually put you ahead of your competition. It can improve driver retention. It can essentially open doors that may not have opened to you previously. And so really, the one thing that we always say is, quote unquote, being safe is really just the beginning. Safety starts with, being safe, making sure that, as part of your public responsibility to the community at large, making sure that you are operating in a safe way. But ultimately, there's so many avenues that you can take it, and in so many different ways that it can benefit you as an operation. And, as we said earlier, one of the kind of what we focus on is, you're in the driver's seat and we just keep you there.
So awesome. And as everyone listening can hear, there is a lot of things that you need to be perfect on, or as close to perfect as possible, to reap the benefits. And again, that's why Kyle and Charlotte continue to be my go-to. It's really nice just being able to ask like a weird question, like, hey, how do you perceive this? Or what is your thoughts on that? Or can you just give me guidance on this? Because that's, again, I like relying on my experts to sound intelligent, because I learned a long time ago, you don't want to guess. So no, I really appreciate it. Just kind of in closing, were there any final thoughts you had? And also, how can people get in contact with you guys?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, it's come.
Sorry, I just wanted to actually quickly jump in and say, one thing we did leave off the list, and I don't usually talk about it too much, but is Ctpac, right? And how that fits in with human trafficking a little bit, right? So I don't know if you wanted to kind of
one of the things that we work with carriers on is application for Ctpac. If you are a cross-border carrier and you are going down into the US, cargo security is a really important part of your operation. And Ctpac is essentially a designation in which you're able to satisfy US border and customs that your load is secure. That means nobody has put anything on your load, but also that there aren't individuals potentially who have been smuggled on board without your knowledge. And so that is something that we help carriers work towards getting. But also on the other side to that, human trafficking is something which I think people in our industry are becoming more and more aware of, and certainly raising the profile in that area is something that in the future that's the direction that we're moving towards, in terms of bringing industry knowledge to it, bringing the industry's attention to it. But ultimately, yeah, Ctpac, if you are going down into the US, being able to show that you have a secure load, again, certainly will save you time at border crossings.
That's awesome. And yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That's also something that we, I'd say collectively, we're very passionate on, and something that Charlotte will definitely speak on more and more just as we do more of these type of interviews, which I think is awesome, because as we were talking about before we were recording, there's things that you have to have in place. Absolutely. There's legislation demanding it. And then there's the necessities in life, and we can all agree, and I think everyone listening can agree, protecting people is our number one priority. And that's essentially why we are in these businesses, is to actually protect people. And when someone's vulnerable, someone got manipulated, there's lots of different things that happen for human trafficking to occur. To protect people that at that point feel like they can't protect themselves is so important. And there's some really cool associations doing some great work that, again, Charlotte will touch on most likely on a different episode. And yeah, we just wanted to spotlight that. Is it's of most importance, and it's really exciting for me to hear and learn that ARTC is going to be putting a lot of focus on that in the very near future, because it's a necessity, it's so important. But yeah, we all have the opportunity to help. And I think, yeah, it's just like the board behind me always says, keep it simple, save a life. And it honestly is just being aware. So yeah, I'm really excited just to learn more, to see more, and to be involved more. And I know, like, just collectively, there's a lot of really good companies in Alberta that, as that becomes more of a focus, more attention's on it, that's again being led by good organizations. I think, yeah, we'll really be able to see a change in there too. So thanks for bringing that up.
Awesome. And yeah, for anybody that wants to connect with us, there's a number of ways you can connect with us. You can connect with us via email at info@artcompliance.ca. You can reach us by phone at 780-910-8399. You can get us at nscpros.com. And we're also on LinkedIn and Facebook. So LinkedIn is Kyle May, TPA, and Facebook is NSC Compliance.
That's awesome. And I'll make sure I include all of your contact details, socials, everything on in the show notes. And yeah, absolutely. So just, again, thank you so much for taking the time. It is a Sunday, but yeah, I think everyone listening now can see a clear picture of who is my experts. It's ARTC, Kyle and Charlotte. And I say that with all humility, no fluff. It's just, yeah, thank you very much for being on today. I appreciate it.
You're fantastic. And honestly, Josh, you're great. Your knowledge is vast as well. So it's
Absolutely.
excellent. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Well, that's all for today's episode. So thank you so much, Kyle and Charlotte, for hopping on the Truck Focus podcast. I'm just, again, blown away by the amount of knowledge and information and passion shared in today's episode. And thank you again just for being such a big influence in my life. And I was super happy to introduce them to the industry through the Truck Focus podcast. So all of our listeners today, highly recommend getting in touch with Kyle and Charlotte if you have any questions about compliance, audits, logbook monitoring, trip inspection reports to IFTA, bunch of different types of stuff. They're a really good resource when we're talking electronic logbooks. And what does that look like from a carrier's perspective going through an audit? What are the requirements still that carriers need to do, professional drivers, just the ease of use, and lots of exciting stuff. So thanks again, Kyle and Charlotte. I really appreciate it. All of their contact details are included in the show notes, and I highly recommend reaching out to them. Really good people, really easy to work with, and just, yeah, overall, I'm just super happy. So thank you so much. As always, I ask you that you subscribe to our YouTube channel just by pressing that little red button, because the more subscribers that we get, the greater the reach, the greater the impact. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform on our website, I ask that you just subscribe to our channel through those platforms as well. Sign up for our email list, lots of good stuff in the works. And just, yeah, thank you so much again. Have a great day. Bye.